A dozen cars set off from the Roots Archive Centre at Roxton, bound for the British Motor Museum at Gaydon. They had all competed in the World Cup and London to Sydney marathons of 1968 to 1993. It was still raining as they approached the museum, where they were led down the approach road to take up their positions in the outside display by Gene Denton's MGB entry in the 1968 London to Sydney. This car is now being restored by the MG Car Club. Inside the museum, an audience gathered to listen to the experiences of some of those who took part in the London to Sydney event some 50 years ago. The scene was set by Wayne Scott.
On November the 24th, 1968, more than 250 people from 19 nations set off on a 10,000-mile endurance rally from London to Sydney. Crossing 10 countries, competitors encountered officious border guards, gangs of rock-throwing children, treacherous driving conditions, collisions, breakdowns, injuries, wayward dogs, livestock, and even kangaroos. Millions of spectators crowded the roads, and even bandits occasionally, as well, as we'll hear later on this afternoon. And of course, all of the press in the UK were absolutely transfixed on this fantastic event. Amongst the professional drivers, there are a large number of enthusiastic amateurs who we'll hear from this afternoon as well, and some of whom had never raced or rallied before in their lives. And after a stop off in Bombay, there was a 9-day sea crossing to Australia. Once the teams had reached Perth in Australia, the rally restarted. That was the 14th of December, so the height of the summer in Australia, of course, with a 3,000-mile trek through the outback, finishing in Sydney on the 31st of December. So let's start the stories, let's start the memories, and let's start by introducing Jim Gavin, everyone.
Jim. I don't see that glass of whiskey there.
Yes, we need it. We could have a really funny afternoon by the time we got to about 2 o'clock. Days of very little sleep. You must have all been on the ragged edge by then.
We still couldn't get at the problem, you know. But so we got, to get to the finish, we were using a lot of oil. So Castrol did a good job. He gave us we had a 5-gallon drum at the passenger's feet with a stirrup pump in the top of it. You ready? We've got a fellow in the garage said, you can have it for nothing. And we cut the stirrup pump, you know, they used during the war to put out fires and all sorts of things. There's a little brass nozzle on the end. We cut that off because, you know, it was only meant to squirt water. But by using the stirrup pump in this 5-gallon drum, with the hose going out the window and in under the bonnet and stuffed into the top, jammed in with cloth, and any time the oil pressure gauge flickered, we'd give it another, it's very hard to lift it, you know. But we used 10 gallons to get the last, I think the last 600 miles into Sydney.
In terms of the army entry, was obviously, you can see from the scrapbooks that we've got lined up out there that the newspapers were following all of the entrants, and there was a lot of interest in the rally back home in England in 1968. Was there a lot of interest shown from the forces in it? Do you feel like the army was behind you and following you as you went?
Yes, I think my regiment actually were the main, because I persuaded my commanding officer at the time, who luckily was car mad rather than horse mad, being cavalry, but we then eventually purloined the brand new Land Rover from the army, which was in fact going to the postal department, but it was at Rheindahlem headquarters, along with lines and lines of Land Rovers. They just sit there for months. Anyhow, I was able to borrow one, should we say, from the army, and then I took it back to Roebuck and talked to Colonel Peter Pendercutlet, who happened to be in charge of military sales, and Keith Kent, who was the PR director. And they said, yeah, yes, we might be able to do 1 or 2 things for you. Bring your car. I said, no, the car's outside now. You can start straight away. And they were absolutely fantastic. We had to take the front axle out and put a beam axle in, because obviously we would have been unfair on other competitors having 4-wheel drive. Yeah. So it was the only 2-wheel drive Land Rover in existence. It did actually go from London to Sydney without a single breakdown of any description.
Wow.
But what they said in the regulation was because it was limited, there was a limited amount of room for cars, there were probably, I can't remember that number, well let's say it was 60. If more than 60 cars got to Bombay, then only 60 would be allowed on board. And that was our big headache because we lost 5 hours, and as Brian said, we only just made the Cabot control. So we basically, well, what about Australia? We wanted a 9-day cruise, didn't we? And we wanted badly to get on this board. In actual fact, I don't know how many cars there were, but they took every mortal car that was still running on board the ship. So that was it. And I think we were somewhere at Bombay.
50th.
Sorry?
We were 50th.
We were in the 50s anyway, at Bombay. Eventually dragged ourselves up to 24th in Australia. And I particularly remember, this was a long event. And all of a sudden, I think, particularly with Tony, the penny dropped on the last night and the last day. I'm on a rally, I'll better start trying. And he put some good times up on the last 500 miles, and that was it.
By lunchtime, the weather outside had improved for the parade of cars around the museum. Wayne Scott interviewed the drivers as they came round.
Badly missed. This, though, is the MGB. And it was a bit of a surprise in 1968. A lot of people said that it couldn't be done in a British sports car, but an MGB did take part. It was built especially for this event, albeit on somewhat of a shoestring. John Watson is driving it. Hello, John. Tell us a little bit about where this car has been since 1968.
Right, it was entered by Jean Denton, who ended up as Baroness Jean Denton, and was in the Parliament of John Major. And her navigator was Tom Boyce, who built the car with a guy called Pete Smith. She raced this car in September of '68 and then decided she wanted to do the event. Her husband Tony paid the entry fee, and Tom and Pete Smith and Tony Denton converted it to do the London to Sydney Marathon. After the event, she rallied it in the Scottish Rally. Then it seemed to have got lost a bit. We know it was in a scrapyard in the early 70s. It was then owned by somebody, we're not 100% certain, but we found it in a scrapyard in 2015. A gentleman was asked to clear a load of houses, and in one of the garages was this. And it has on the dash the London to Sydney Finishers plaque. He took a photograph of that, sent it to the MG Car Club. And from that, we realised what the car was. Bill Price, ex-competitions department, looked at it and said, yes, there's certain parts like the roll cage, the extra spare wheel hanger, and the petrol tanks are special tuning parts. So we went down and we purchased the car. We got it delivered to British Motor Heritage in Whitney, who stored it while we decided what to do with it. It was a horrible colour of sort of a purple. And due to donations from MG Car Club members and other traders and other people, we've now got to the stage of, as you hear, it's drivable, it stops, but we're not quite ready to put it on the road.
This is a tremendous achievement by everyone in the MG Car Club to have saved this car and come together to restore it. And I understand that it's part of a campaign to really get support on the road undergoing.
Yeah, we still need a few more hundreds of pounds to finish it. And then people like Gaydon here want it. People, Bewley want it. They want to do a special display of cars of female drivers. The RAC Club have said they would like it in the atrium at the RAC Club. MG have a showroom in Piccadilly. They would put it on display there. And our main sponsors, Mosh Europe, in their showroom in Heathrow, they want to put it on display, and British Motor Heritage at Whitney. So it's going to do the rounds. We're going to take it around and about, and then in 3 or 4 years decide what we're going to do with the thing.
Back inside, more personalities from the event related some of their experiences.
Ladies and gentlemen, Paddy Hopker and Alec Poole. Take a seat, gents. Make it. Take us back then to 1967, before the event had taken place, Paddy, and how you first heard about it and what inspired you to get involved.
Well, we were driving for British Leyland at that time. I mean, every year was another drive from 1961 to 70 when we quit, and the Landcrab was the best car to use for that particular event. And it was a very exciting event because it was not going around in circles, it was actually going somewhere. And I hadn't seen those certain parts of Australia before, so it was a terrific challenge. And I mean, you know, the fact that it got so much publicity with the Daily Express and give me the names, Tommy Sutcliffe, that's right, and Tony Ambrose and Jack Sears and Beaverbrook. I mean, I see Beaverbrook's son quite a lot now. He's in the BRDC and on the board, and we talk about it. And his dad was a real put the money behind that. The newspaper, it was the Daily Express, was it? And it was terrific. And I mean, we had a few days on the boat as well, on the way to Australia, which was not very hard work, and it was a great event. Sorry, that's.
Take us to that first day then that you turned up at the start line, and there must have been an incredible atmosphere. What were you thinking as a driver as you turned up getting ready for the off?
Well, I remember it was Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
Well, it was driving into the unknown. I mean, in those days there were no communications, and therefore everything was quite different. Nowadays everybody knows where they're going and where they're going to be. In those days there was a great anticipation of when you come around the next corner for the service, will they be there or will they have got blocked somewhere? And you know, we were going into countries like Eastern Turkey and what have you, which weren't places to go on holiday, and it was the anticipation of what lay ahead. It was all the time. In Afghanistan, we stayed the night in Kabul, and we went through Afghanistan. The king closed the roads in Afghanistan, and if you look at that in history, that's something else. And then we went over the Khyber Pass, and we got to Bombay, and you know, and you didn't know how you were doing. It was much more of a surprise event. Nowadays, everybody knows everything because they've all got their iPhones and communication.
Of course, who went on to win in 1968. So I've got Dick Guy with me and Phil Davison, and they'll tell us more. So let's start with you then, Dick. Give us some background on the route.
First of all, we both feel a bit honoured to be in such a distinguished seat. But anyway, well, yeah, I mean, we were instrumental in the building of the Hunter. I was mainly responsible for the engine, and Phil was my apprentice at the time.
So why were Roots Group so keen on getting involved with this particular event? Obviously, the guys from the other side of Coventry were involved, and that would be reason enough. But what was the appetite for it within Roots at the time?
I don't know really. I think that well, Phil would agree that the success or otherwise that we were enjoying with the Tiger and the Imp was not brilliant, so to speak. And I think the decision was taken by Des O'Dell and Marcus Chambers to press to get a budget, which was the hardest thing to do the London Sydney. That was the momentum behind it, really.
Why the Hunter at the time? What was particular?
Well, various options were considered. Des O'Dell's first indication was that he would like to have used the Group 6 Imp. But I think
the idea of that was that we would only really felt we could ever be competitive up to Bombay.
Right.
But the car after that would have been expired, I think.
Struggled a little bit.
if it got to Bombay.
Yeah, if it got there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so slightly different, I guess, from the rear-engine Porsche that would have been out at the same time.
There was even a move for a while to build a Hunter with a Tiger engine in it.
Right.
But that was soon dismissed.
Yeah, of course. Well, big V8 would have meant a lot of petrol stops along
That's
the way.
right, yeah.
Ted, come and take a seat. You're the man behind this fantastic event that we've all enjoyed today. It's been lovely for me to come and interview so many fantastic personalities and rally stars and hear all the interesting stories behind this anniversary, 50th anniversary of this amazing rally. So I think a big round of applause to Ted Taylor, who puts all of this on this committee.